thought I'd just sort of introduce myself. I know many of you by sight, if not intimately, and I thought I'd just introduce myself and then really throw the whole thing open. For those of you who don't know what a producer does, a producer has the ultimate responsibility for a series of programs, artistically, financially, and editorially. Now obviously on the editorial side there is a script editor who contributes massively to that sector of the job. On the financial side there is a unit manager or associate producer who also contributes massively on that area of the job. And then artistically, of course, each separate program has a different director. Each story in Doctor Who has a different director. And the director contributes massively artistically to that section of the job. But it is ultimately the producer's responsibility. He takes the rap. The buck stops there on all those three levels. Now, as part of the introduction, I'd like to say that I first worked on Doctor Who in 1969 as a floor assistant, which is the very lowliest production job, a sort of glorified call boy, if you like, who knocks on dressing room doors and says, "Will you come on the set now, please?" I then worked again on the show in 70 and 71 with John Pertwee on two stories. Then I went off and was very lucky to become an assistant floor manager, and then a production manager, and then a production unit manager, which is that financial side of the job. And at that point I went back to Doctor Who, as well as other programs. I was working on Flesh and Blood, Angels, what else? All Creatures Grunt and Smell, thank you. And of course Doctor Who. And I worked solidly for 3 years with the late Graham Williams. And then when he left the show, that's when I was asked to take over. So I became producer towards the end of 79, 10 years after I started on it, as the lowliest of low. And I was then lucky enough to have the job at the top of the tree. And I did Tom Baker's last year, the whole of Peter Davison, the whole of Tom Baker, and the whole of Sylvester McCoy. And then I left the BBC in 1990 and went freelance. So that's a brief background for those that don't know, and basically I'll throw the whole thing open and ask any questions you like. Yeah.
I'd like to fill in perhaps a rather embarrassing gap in my knowledge. What things have you done since 1990?
I went to BBC Enterprises for 2 years, straight after I left the show, and did some era tapes, the Pertwee years, the Troughton years, and so on. I then did, it's nearly all Doctor Who. I then did Children in Need during 93. I did a pilot for a kids series that looks as though it's finally happening next year. I've done quite a lot of work in the theatre. I lecture. In fact, I'm off to Estonia on Wednesday.
Lecturing media studies?
Media, yeah. Film and television production. And I'm judging a film festival out there as well. But I don't actually feel the need now to want to work 52 weeks a year. That sounds terribly grand, and it's certainly not from the residuals I got from Doctor Who, because I don't get them, much to my chagrin. But I don't have the fervour to work as much as I used to.
What's the name of the children's series, please?
Big Step. We actually did a pilot which we shot on 35mm. We shot it out of Shepperton. and it has a voiceover from Tom Baker, and it looks as though it'll go to series in January or February next year, and Tom will be involved with it, but he doesn't actually appear in it, he's only the commentary, and it's live action.
BBC?
No.
Oh.
Carlton. Yeah.
John, you worked your way up really, because you said from floor assistant up to producer. Have you got any comments on the way the BBC has changed in recent years? Everyone has seems to agree.
Well, it has changed so dramatically. It's almost as though the heart has been ripped out of it. When I was there, you know, and I had 23 or 24 years, very happy years, mainly in Threshold House on Shepherd's Bush Green. And it was a wonderful place to work because the doors were only ever shut of production offices if there was a planning meeting or if you were casting. The rest of the time they were kept open, and there was a free and frank exchange of views, and you could drop in with no hint of acrimony to any office and ask an opinion about anything. And what shocked me, you know, has shocked me during the 90s, every time I've gone back there for the occasional guest appearance, is that it's all shut doors now. Everyone is very, very closeted and secretive and almost scared of what the next office is doing. As I say, heartless. I think Mr. Burt has a lot to answer for. Yeah.
About the edited videos, is it possible to see the unedited videos of Doctor Who in future, please?
Well, no. But I've got most of them. I've got an awful lot of the recording tapes and the initial edits at home that I've kept just as a sort of reference point for myself, because they come in quite handy if I'm lecturing, you know, to kind of illustrate something. But I don't think they'd be very keen on that. I know that enterprises have put out some sort of recut versions, you know, including a few missing scenes or whatever. But on the whole, the reason stuff is cut is either because it's not good enough or because it's not contributing to the story. And if a show is geared to be 24.5 minutes in length by its sheer definition, then really that's the way it ought to stay, it seems to me. Yeah.
But with DVD now, it's possible to present the programme as a broadcast.
But they haven't asked me to do any DVDs yet.
Won't be waiting long, John.
But yeah.
So when you were sort of just, as you put it, the lowest of the low, you had tend to bring knocked on those doors and sort of say to the people you were kind of the autograph as well? Or did you sort of, because you were working, when you were allowed to sort of do that kind of thing?
I never ever thought about it, and I must have been mad, because I did 2 years on the Morecambe and Wise show, and we had just about everybody. I can remember we did one Christmas special, and there was every day and every night of the theatre in this Christmas special, every living day and night. And I think back and think, I must have been mad. And I was invited to the party afterwards, and I went, and I could have just got the autographs as part of the team, but I didn't know, it never occurred to me. I used to collect autographs when I was younger, before I went into the business, and I collected pop autographs, people you won't have heard of, like Helen Shapiro and Dusty Springfield, and people like that. But then I went into the theatre, and I suppose in a way, not grew out of it, it didn't seem appropriate, because when I went into the theatre, initially it was in rep, and there weren't any famous people. There were actors, you know, very good actors, a lot of them, but they weren't well-known names. And I suppose subsequently when I started doing cantos with Des O'Connor and Dick Emery and people like that, I could have got autographs, but by then I would have the habit. mad, I know. Yeah.
Out of the stories which were planned for Doctor Who during your time on the programme, but then fell through for various reasons, which is the one that you most regret not making?
I think it was the one in Singapore.
The autumn one.
Yeah, it was going to be really, really good, and we got this fantastic deal. We were going to be flown out to Singapore and put up in a hotel with no charges for location, thanks to the tourist board. I think it was going to be £300 a head. You know, it was going to be cheaper than staying in the UK. And it was a cracking story idea involving the Rani, the Master, and the Autumn. I think that one really.
Did Robert Holmes actually write the complete script for that?
No. No. I think only the treatment, I think.
You brought back Jacqueline Hill for Meg Loss, and I've heard reported that you felt that was a mistake. Is that true? And if so...
No, I don't think it was a mistake at all. It was Terence Dudley's idea. Terence Dudley, who directed it, had worked with Jackie and knew her very well because of Alvin Raycroft, Jackie's husband. And no, I didn't think it was a mistake. I think if people thought, oh, you know, that's Susan, well, it's been a bit blinkered, I think. I think for
So did you have in mind that other previous companions to bring back in guest roles or not?
No, not particularly. It was a case of Jackie was suggested by Terence. I thought it was a fine idea. The fact that she'd been in it before didn't really bother me, and I didn't see why it would bother the audience. Did it bother you?
No.
Yeah.
Just reading on from that, Michael Craig was one of the possible nominations to play Trelfer in Cave Rampazani. The room of doing the...
Ooh, not that I recall, but I wouldn't swear to it. Why, who says he was?
This is something that you read over the years, and
not that I
exactly
recall.
where I read it.
No.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
John, you were talking earlier about you've got the director does this, script editor does that. Is there any one story you can think of where everything just came together or went really well? Because I mean, everybody always asks you, I'm sure, when things have gone wrong. Are there any particular stories that stand out in your mind where it just came together and you're really
Where everything
very
went
proud
right?
and you're really pleased with the
No.
result?
No. You know, there are so many imponderables in making a show. There's a huge element of compromise for a start. You know, if you don't get the director you want, that's compromise number one. If you don't get your star actor, that's compromise number two. So I don't think you can ever be totally pleased, or anything can be totally smooth, because it's never going to run as you would like it. Some shows are much more hell than others for various reasons. I mean, if you're on location for 12 days and it rains on 11 of them, you know, tempers are bound to get frayed, and it's going to be, you know, quite unpleasant. Then again, if you're working in a quarry and it's sunshine for 12 days and temperatures at 98, you know, it's the same thing. People get tetchy because water's run out, or there's no soft drink, or the drinks up, you know, all those kind of silly little things. So nothing ever goes totally smoothly, I don't think, in any production. Yeah.
There's been mention about his sending the audience behind the sofa, and Tony mentioned about his Dalek experience. Is there any episode or character that was in any of your productions that shows up your side?
I thought the Destroyer was very, very effective. And I liked the humours. I thought there was something really spooky about them coming from different eras of time. Then again, I loved the Marshmen coming out of the water at the end of episode 1 of that story. I thought that, you know, that was a really shiver-making scene. Quite a lot, to be honest. I was never particularly fond of the Daleks. You know, we brought them back regularly because they meant bums on seats and lots of publicity, but they're really a bit limited. Even though we made them go upstairs, which the press seemed to have forgotten. I wish somebody would point it out to the press. Yeah.
It seems just recently, the 80s as an era has really come back in. Everyone's looking at it. And I just wondered what you thought, because a few years ago I remember everyone saying the 80s was horrible, and now it's all, oh, the 80s was fantastic. Not just Doctor Who, but across the board. I just wondered if you...
I think it's fashion, isn't it? You know, the 70s are popular for a while, and the 60s and the 80s and so on. Speaking personally, you know, I seem to be in and out of fashion at a rate of knots. You know, one year I'm the best thing since sliced bread, and the next I'm the devil incarnate. You know, I mean, you kind of have to take it on the chin as far as you're able. I think it's just a symptom of. I heard at the end of Gary's talking about people at the co-op. You know, there is a great loss of magic on television, and I think that nostalgia, by its very definition, is because people are dissatisfied with the current. And I think that there is a lot of very poor television at the moment, and therefore people will look back to another time. And you know, we don't seem to get sitcoms right very often now. We do sometimes. I particularly like My Family and Gimme, which is. But they're few and far between. So I think that, you know, it's just a case of people looking back because there isn't very much going on at the moment. And all these people shows, you know, no stars, just members of the public. Yeah.
You talk about attitudes to nostalgia. Whatever happened to your proposal that you put forward seemingly quite a lot over the years to bring back Compact in another form?
Well, that had a very interesting career, really. It was my idea to bring it back, and with Eric Saywood, we actually commissioned, we got the BBC to agree to commission several episodes. It was either 2 or 4, from Peter Ling and Hazel Adair, who originally created it. And they were commissioned, they were delivered, they were accepted. And then the whole thing was hit on the head. And then Peter Ling and Hazel Adair showed the scripts to somebody, I think at Channel 4. And the BBC was asked to relinquish its rights early, because when you commission a script, you never actually own the script. You own the rights to televisualize it within 2 years of accepting it. Right? So it's not when it's delivered, you then have to go through the acceptance process, and that triggers the final payment for the writer. And you then have 2 years to make it. At the end of those 2 years, the writer is within his rights to take that script somewhere else. And we, the BBC, were asked, through me, would we relinquish our rights even though the 2 years wasn't up? So it was quite clear that Channel 4 were very keen on it. So it went to Channel 4 under Michael Grade. And then Michael came to the BBC. And he then brought Impact, it was called. It was originally going to be called Compact Now, and then became Impact. And then he brought Susie Hush from Channel 4 back to the BBC with the scripts that had been originally paid for by the BBC, paid again for by Channel 4, paid again for by the BBC, and then they dropped it again. And nobody's heard of it since. But it would have been very good, I think, because what we decided was that for those of you that are too young to remember, Compact was about a magazine very similar to Woman's Own or Woman's Weekly. And Impact was much more akin to Cosmopolitan. So it was a much more glitzy, upmarket kind of product. And the people were much more upmarket. You know, it's about photographers and fashion reporters and models and so on, rather than the original Compact, which was about the editor and a tea lady. And Johnny Briggs from Coronation Street was the odd job man, I think. So it's much more about the sort of professional people of it. It would have been terrific, but sadly I think it's dead. Yes, on the end.
Is there a single story where, in your capacity as producer, you would have stood down from that role and preferred to act instead?
Is there a story in which
In Doctor Who?
that I would like to have played a part?
Yes.
I often think, I wouldn't have stepped down from my job, but I often think, you know, there you were all those years and you never got in a Dalek. And I didn't, I mean, just about everybody else, you know, would sort of say, oh, you know, I must have a little go in the Dalek and jump into a Dalek on the studio floor, and I never did. So I suppose that's my regret, but no, I don't think so. My acting is not very good. That's why I gave it up. Yeah.
Who would you like to have cast, if you could have casted anyone to be in your season as a Doctor? Like I said, remember David Bowie was up for Shadows Jack and Androzani. Would you like to see David Bowie play, or who would you really like to have cast?
The problem with when you don't get the people that you thought about is that you forget them. Now, I'm believing you when you say that we wanted David Bowie. I mean, I'm not saying we did. I don't remember.
It might have been Graham Harper.
Well, I mean, it's very possible. It's very possible. I'm not saying that it's incorrect, but I just don't remember. There are loads of people I would have liked to work with. I think my one sadness was there was a tiny part in, and Graham Harper directed it, the Dalek story in Snow with a big blue coat. What was that called? Revelation. There was a little part of the emaciated man in episode 1, is it? And we actually offered that to Lord Olivier. And the reason we offered it was Gordon Granger, who was in one of the Rani stories, the one with Stevenson in it. Gordon Granger was writing Lord Olivier's biography, right? And Gorn said, oh, I had dinner last night with Larry. And Larry wants to know why he hasn't ever been asked to do a Doctor Who. And I said, yeah. And he said, no, seriously. But, you know, it can't be anything with too many dicobos, too many words, because, you know, he's getting on. But if the right little cameo comes up, he'd love to do it. And so that was the reason we offered it, but in fact he declined. Probably the cold, I think. But I would have liked to have worked with him again, as I worked with him on Awful and Well. But no, that would have been nice. Yes, right with that.
Were you happy with the casting of Paul McGann in as the 8th Doctor in the TV movie?
I thought he was terrific once he got going. I thought, personally, you know, it can only be a personal opinion, I thought it took too long for him to get over the regeneration crisis. it would fine in duration if it had been a series on television, but for a one-off, I wanted him up and running much more early. I thought the last 20 minutes he was cracking. Yeah.
Is there anyone that you've actually sort of had a letter from sort of saying, please come, can I be in Doctor Who, but you've actually said, well, there isn't actually anything you could do? Or
Well, not so much letters from artists directly, but their agents would often ring or write to say that so-and-so would love to do it. And that's our whole list of people. And we used to keep a list of, people who wanted to be in the show, because if you've got people like June Whitfield saying they'd love to do a Doctor Who, if the right part comes along, then you want them to be in it, because you know how good and solid and reliable they are. Yes, lots and lots of people who, even though I was there for such a long time, you just couldn't get round to them all, or by the time you offered, they weren't free.
Can you give us some names, just you said June Whitfield?
Somewhere at home, I've still got the list. I promise next time I come to one of these, I'll bring the list in and read it out. I mean, I just kept it, because you cross them off when you sort of have them in the shows. But loads and loads of people. It did become, I once said, and it's been misquoted, well, it's not misquoted, it's correctly quoted, but it's misinterpreted. I said it's the Morecambe and Wise show. What I meant was, having worked on Morecambe and Wise, people used to approach John Ammons, who was the producer, to be in it, because it had such a cachet. It was a real feather in the cap to be in the Morecambe and Wise show. And Doctor Who was the same, or became the same. And I think the reason it became the same was, one, it was famous as a show for a start. But more importantly, every actor, if they don't have a son or a grandson, they've got a nephew or a niece or a godson or a goddaughter. That wonderful actor, Richard, wonderful actor, Todd, wonderful actor, Richard Todd. I'd worked with him in the theatre many, many years ago, and he came in to do Kinder, and he told me that his son accepted the part, that the agent ran through and said, is your father there? And he said, no, he's out. And he said, well, it's Doctor Who, 4 episodes. Could you tell him to ring me back? And he said, oh, he'll do it. So that, that's what I meant by it, was that people needed very little persuasion to do it. Because they went up in the estimation of their offspring. Nimor. Yeah.
There were certain plans that were done for the series that didn't get made. Were there anything in line for sort of 1990? I know that you left and it all stopped, but was there anything there, or did it just...
I don't think we'd commissioned anything. In fact, I'm pretty sure of that. I don't think we'd commissioned anything. I think I was absolutely determined not to do anymore. And people have said to me, even today downstairs, did you sort of stay, if you left earlier, would it have been cancelled earlier? I don't think so. But there was a producer at the BBC, a very experienced producer, called Ken Riddington. And I can't use his precise language, but he used to say that if I left it, no other expletive deleted would take it on. But I don't know how true that is or not, but I certainly had absolutely had enough of it. But, only somebody at the BBC who's probably not there anymore, because they've moved on to another channel, would know. But I doubt very much. But it was a pain of a show to do. I mean, it was the most complicated show at that time. And it was appalling money, comparatively. I mean, even Blake Seven had £38,000 an hour more than we did, which I always thought was, you know, totally obscene and unfair. It was very, very difficult to do the job that I was doing. You know, you're looking at fivers and tenors and, you know, can we make do with not having a costume for the stunt double and don't tell the artist? Not joyous when it comes to sort of pairing and pairing and pairing, because every year we would redo the budgets and every year they'd come bouncing back. Sometimes the unit manager and I would go and directly pitch to the controller and say, look, the reason we need the extra money is X, Y, Z. And, you know, always we were told, no. Bill Cotton used to say, John, I loved what you did this season, I just want another 26 the same. Now, add to this little setup the fact that every year the retail price index went up by, say, 5%. The BBC would say, but we're only giving programmes a 3.5% rise. So effectively you were doing it 1.5% cheaper than the previous year. And I worked out that my last season on paper was about 30% cheaper than the first season. So that's what you were fighting the whole time. And, you know, we wanted more time, we wanted more money. And we couldn't have either. So it was a hard slog, make no mistake, for everyone, not just me, for everyone, for the directors, for the costume design. The costume designers were so inventive. And the visual effects designers, you know, people say, oh, you know, it looked like it was made on Blue Peter with a washing up bottle. It probably was. Yes?
Was it difficult rounding up all the people, getting everybody together in the dimensions in time?
It was a nightmare. It was a logistical nightmare. There were 34 people in it, I think, 34 speaking parts, and 32 of them had other jobs. Kate O'Mara was appearing in Southsea. Sylvester was in Greenwich. Bonnie was in High Wycombe. Everyone was scattered all over. The schedule was done, well, it was done to fit round everybody. There was no sort of, wouldn't it be nice to do this on Wednesday? It was, you're doing that. However, it was tremendous fun. The EastEnders gang were superb and joined in, and a lot of them, well, you can see there were one or two walk-ons in it. There were people who, again, rang up, the chap who plays Ian Beale rang up and said, why haven't I been asked? Well, you know, we can't use everybody. And he said, well, if I come on the day, can I walk across the bag? So we said, yeah. And the little Chinese girl who was in it at the time, same thing. It was lovely. It was great fun to do. Great fun. Yeah, like that.
If you were casting a new Doctor today, who would you go for?
Oh, Kathy Burke. I don't know. I really don't know. No idea. Yeah.
If somebody did start a new Doctor series, would it necessarily be at the BBC, or would you go to a foreign production?
I don't think the BBC would ever part with it. I think the BBC has finally realised that in terms of merchandising and so on, it is, you know, the goose that laid the golden egg. So I don't think they'd ever part with it.
What I mean is, would you produce the programme at, say, an American company and sell it to BBC?
I wouldn't want to do it.
No, so do you think that people banging on at the beat to bring it back, getting no joy, so go to someone like Channel 7 Australia, make the series?
Are you asking, do I think it's possible? Very remote, and you know, we saw what happened when there was sort of American interference. I mean, the thought of the Australians. You know, they'd have gay letters that didn't happen. Well, I've just been told that we've got time just for one more question. So, one final one, make it a good one.
It was not difficult to move it, Doctor Who from Saturday when Tom Baker to the weekday. Who was in charge of that?
The question is about moving to twice weekly. The decision was the controllers. I was asked my opinion, and I said that I thought that it was totally wrong, that I thought although Saturdays had changed in terms of the way people viewed television, I thought twice weekly was a mistake. I still think to this day, well, I know to this day that the BBC was dying to have a twice weekly soap, and I feel that Doctor Who in a way was made a sacrificial lamb in that it was testing out time slots to see where a soap would sit most comfortably twice weekly. And when you think the show was put up against the end of Crossroads, the beginning of This Is Your Life, at one point Coronation Street even, I think. I remember Michael Grade saying to me at one point, don't worry about the ratings. That is not, you know, not to be, not your concern. Don't worry about it. There are other reasons for this kind of scheduling manoeuvre. And of course, what it was rehearsing where EastEnders went. Because if you remember when EastEnders started, it started at 7 o'clock. It was only subsequently it moved to 7:30. So, you know, it sort of worked. I mean, it did get an appreciable audience opposite very, very stiff competition. But I don't think it was really right for the show. It doesn't seem to me to be happy twice a week. It seems to me a weekly festivity that we've all enjoyed and loved over the years, and that's the very best place for it. I don't think it sits comfortably as a 90-minuter. You know, it sits much more comfortably 25 minutes once a week. On that note, I'll thank you very much for your attention.